Let's talk about wide receivers that you need to be starting in week 6 of fantasy football. As always, we're going to break them up into 3 different buckets: your smash starts, your solid starts, and then your high risk, high reward starts. 9 total players, 3 categories. The guys on the screen right now are all obvious must starts. Make sure they are locked into your lineups, starting with the high risk, high reward section. First man up is Matthew Golden. While I did recommend this week that you pick up Christian Watson, stash him at the bottom of your bench, he's likely not going to be active this week, which paves the way for the rookie receiver to have that big breakout performance that we've all been waiting for. We know the Packers are coming off a bye. Bye weeks tend to help rookies. They get more integrated into the offense. They get that post-bye bump. And Golden has quietly been leading this Packers receiver room in receiving yards the last 2 weeks and has been a full-time player over the last 2 weeks as well, seeing over 70% of the snaps and sports the 4th highest passer rating when targeted among rookie receivers. We know Golden is an elite separator. He's a very strong route runner. He has blazing speed, probably has the best hands on this Packers team, and his targets have increased every single week, along with the solid performance in week 5 in that overtime tie against the Dallas Cowboys. 5 receptions, 58 yards, 6 targets, 11.3 fantasy points. And he gets another really good matchup in week 6 against the Cincinnati Bengals, who have allowed the 4th most passing yards per game this season and have allowed the 9th most fantasy points to the receiver position. So if you're in a pinch, if you need a high upside flex, there's injuries everywhere. We know there's a couple teams on bye as well. I really like Golden to finally have that big blow-up game in this one, in an easy matchup. I really think we're going to finally see that big game, that big blow-up performance from Golden. So if he's on your roster, you need a guy to really give you an edge in your matchup this week, then get him in your starting lineup. Moving on to our next guy, A.J. Brown. Man, oh man, has this been a brutal start for AJB. I'm not really even sure he warrants being in this category because he's still AJ Brown. But if he's on your team, you've probably gotten to a point where you're frustrated. You're sick of it. You're sick of his 7 points every single week or less than that, and you're really considering benching him. I don't blame you, but I'm here to tell you, just please don't do it. I know it's been tough. Don't do it. I know. I get it. 12 combined fantasy points over the last 2 weeks, single-digit fantasy points in every game but 1 this year. I will say, he should have had a 60-yard touchdown last week that he stopped on his route. He gave up on the route. It was not an overthrow by Jalen Hurts. You can clearly tell that Brown kind of slows up. I don't know what was going on. I don't know if he's so used to not getting the football that he's like, I'm not going to run this route because I know the ball is not coming my way. And then obviously it did. Like, I don't really know what happened, but you could tell that the Eagles made a huge effort to not only throw the ball a lot more, but to get the ball in Brown's hands, as he saw a 37% first read target share. And while he didn't have a great game, Devontae Smith did. Like, good for Smith, but not great for Brown. I will say Brown was being followed by the best corner in football and Pat Surtain for a lot of that contest, so that is not great overall. Again, as brutal as it's been so far, week 6, I'm telling you, is a get right spot for AJB against the New York Giants, who have allowed the 2nd most yards to receivers, and they cannot defend the deep ball whatsoever. We saw Rashid Shaheed score a 50-plus yard touchdown last week. If he can score a long touchdown, so can A.J. Brown. I think he probably does in this game, as the Giants have allowed the 3rd most yards on deep passes this season. It's been tough, but keep the faith with Brown, and I truly do think he has a big game. All right, next man up on the list is Brian Thomas Jr., another really good receiver who just has not put it all together so far this year. It's been extremely frustrating, but I do think the arrow is pointing up for Brian as he's looked better as of late. His catch rate and yards per target have improved over the last 2 weeks. 68% catch rate compared to 28% through the first 3 games. We know Thomas has been dealing with that wrist injury. I think it has probably been affecting him more than he's let on. Like, a wrist injury for a receiver is not great. You've seen him in previous games kind of land on his wrist and then be a little shaken up. Like, if he can get past this injury, we know the talent, the upside that BTJ has. And another thing that needs to happen, this connection between Trevor Lawrence and Thomas needs to grow, needs to evolve, and I think it is. Last week you saw them connect on that really big throw at the end of the game against the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football. I believe it was a 33-yard reception on the sideline that ended up leading to the game-winning touchdown. So those plays matter. I think they're going to continue to hit on bigger plays as the weeks go on. And while he's not putting up the numbers that you thought he would when you drafted him with a late round 1, early round 2 pick, be patient. Don't give up yet. Don't sell him low. Like week 5, he had 4 receptions for 80 yards, which was a season high, like depressingly, but also encouraging because I think he's going to continue to get better. 6 targets in that game, 12 fantasy points. It was his best fantasy production of the year. And you have to remember, this was also in a game where Kansas City dominated the time of possession. I think he would have had a much bigger day against a really good Chiefs secondary had they had the ball more. Like they just could not stop the Chiefs on defense from just marching down the field. And you also have to remember this Liam Cohen offense is complicated. It's not a simple offense to learn. You can tell that they're having a little bit of growing pains, figuring it out, getting used to it. But I think once they do, once they start also throwing the football downfield, they've had like no deep passes so far this year. Once they start doing that, I think Brian Thomas is going to be unlocked because we know he's really good on down the field throws. He's a really good player on a really good offense. Even if Trevor Lawrence is going to continue to be a very average quarterback, I'm betting on the talent of Thomas, the offense of Liam Cohen, and I would be buying low before this week because I think he has his best game of his season so far in week 6 against a banged up Seattle Seahawks secondary that just got shredded by Baker Mayfield, Emeka Egbuka. Yeah, maybe they're not on the same level as those two guys, but I think Thomas is going to eat in this one. So he's been very bad. He's been very disappointing, but I would continue to start him. All right, let's move on to the solid starts section of this video. First man up is Jalen Waddle, who finally showed us the player that we all know that he can be in week 5. Obviously, no Tyreek Hill, done for the year, but Waddle took full advantage. 6 receptions, over 100 yards, touchdown, 9 targets, 23 fantasy points, 35% first read share. He was first in route win rate among all receivers, and Miami finally started to use him correctly. It had to take a Tyreek Hill injury for them to do so, but they started to use Waddle downfield, where he thrives, where good things happen. And it worked as Waddle doubled his year-long deep targets and set a new season high in air yards. It's clear this passing attack is going to run through Waddle going forward with Devon Achane, Darren Waller being second and third options. But going back to 2023, Waddle has played in only 2 games without Tyreek Hill. Obviously the game last week, and then the only other game without Hill in the lineup. He went for 8 receptions, 142 yards, and a touchdown. This type of big time production is going to continue all year long for the 5th-year receiver. I think he's a wide receiver 1, top 12 at the position from here on out, and gets a beatable matchup in week 6 against the LA Chargers, who have allowed 27 PPR fantasy points per game to receivers this season. So if you held on, if you drafted Waddle, it hasn't been great to start the year, but unfortunately with Tyreek Hill being done for the season, I think he is going to go off not only this week, but from here on out. All right, next man up on this list is Davante Adams, who's been quietly very usable from a fantasy football perspective this year, even with his teammate Puka Nacua looking like the best receiver in real life football and fantasy football as he's pacing towards 2,000 receiving yards. What he's doing right now is absolutely insane. But the 32-year-old veteran has still seen at least 8 targets in 4 out of 5 games with the Rams, 13 plus fantasy points in every game but one. You like that, and has showed us that he still has something left in the tank as he ranks 3rd in separation win rate versus man coverage. Adams is still a really great route runner, really strong separator. Those things we already know. Like, he hasn't lost a step in those categories. He obviously benefits from being on an elite Rams offense led by Matthew Stafford. Sean McVay is a brilliant play caller. Davante has 3 touchdowns already on the year, and we'd expect that number to grow as early as this week as he leads the NFL in red zone targets and is 2nd in end zone targets so far this season. The Rams have a plan for Adams, and it's to feature him when it matters the most. It does seem like Puka Nacua is going to have more than a couple touchdowns this year, but Adams is still going to get his share, and the matchup is great against a very banged up, not very good Baltimore Ravens defense. Their secondary has been horrible. It looks like they're probably going to get Kyle Hamilton back in this one, but still, they've allowed the most fantasy points to receivers with a league-high 10 touchdowns allowed to the position this season. Fire up Adams with confidence, and I think this is a big-time blow-up spot for him in week 6. All right, moving on to our next guy, Ladd McConkey. I feel like this list is just full of underperformers, but keep the faith in a lot of these guys. It's been also brutal for Ladd. It's been really rough for the second-year receiver, but you have to remember, they just lost their RB1 in Omarion Hampton for at least the next 4 games. This has already been a very pass-happy offense. They're going to be throwing the football even more now that they probably won't have much of a running game, and Ladd is just too good, too talented of a football player to not be involved. Like, he's coming off his best game of the season. You like to see that, even though it wasn't great. 5 receptions, 39 yards. Finally got into the end zone, 14.9 fantasy points. You'd obviously like to see more yardage, but it's a start. Quentin Johnson was limited with the hamstring injury on Wednesday. It could be nothing, as Wednesday is a lot of rest days for most players, but if he misses this one, then Ladd is obviously a smash start. But for now, we're expecting QJ to play. I'd still be throwing Ladd in your flex if you really need him. This LA offensive line has also been banged up. They have injuries all over the place. Maybe Herbert needs to get the ball out of his hands quick. Maybe Ladd can turn into his security blanket in week 6. We know Keenan Allen, that's kind of his role. But I think Ladd is going to be more involved because I just think the volume is going to be there. They're going to be throwing the football more, as they probably won't have a run game, like I said. And in week 6 against the Miami Dolphins, it's a good matchup, who have allowed 4 receivers to score at least 13.3 PPR points this season. So you could do a lot worse with Ladd McConkey. I do think he builds on his strong performance in week 5. I think he shows out in week 6, and you feel a little bit better about spending a high draft pick on him in fantasy this year. All right, let's move on to our smash starts section of the video. And the first man up is Tetairoa McMillan. He's another guy who's just going to live on this list until he breaks out. Like, the talent is there. The volume has been great. 8+ targets in every game this season. 25% target share. 28% first read share. Wide receiver 13 in expected fantasy points. He looks like the real deal. He looks worthy of being the 8th overall pick in this year's NFL draft. The biggest problem, this offensive line doesn't look great in pass down situations. And Bryce Young, he's so inconsistent. There's some drives where I'm like, oh, Bryce Young is a good NFL quarterback. And then there's other drives where I'm like, Bryce Young looks horrible. Even if Young stays average for the rest of the year, I think T-Mac can still have a big second half of the year. I do think Young is a fine player. I think the offense that he's in, the offensive line has not been great. I do think Young will progress, will get better, but I will say this. If T-Mac does not go crazy this week in this matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, I don't know what to tell you. We know Jalen Coker is trending in the right direction. I don't think he plays this week, but Coker could take a shot at T-Mac's overall volume. That is a little bit concerning, but if you have him on your team, I still really like him for the rest of the year, and I really like him in week 6, as the Cowboys have allowed the most yards and touchdowns to receivers this season in a game where I'm expecting the Panthers to probably be trailing, as Dallas is scorching hot on offense right now. So they're going to have to score points, the Panthers that is, if they want to have a chance against the Dallas Cowboys. And the matchup is great. McMillan is great. If Bryce Young can just put out a serviceable day, if he can just be average or a little bit better than average, there's no reason to think that T-Mac cannot go crazy. I'd be keeping him in your lineup. You can feel really good about it, and I do think he has his best game as a pro. I also think he scores his first NFL touchdown of his young career. Next guy on this list is Stefon Diggs. He made the start list last week, and he came through in a massive way. 10 receptions, 146 yards, 12 targets. In that revenge game against Buffalo, you could tell he was playing at a different speed. He was playing with a little bit of anger. He didn't get into the end zone, but he was a big reason for why they won that game. I did call last week, if you were watching, I thought this could be an upset, not to toot my own horn, but New England pulled off the upset. It was really impressive. 24.6 fantasy points for Diggs last week. 40% target share. And I do think it's safe to say at this point that Diggs is finally back coming off that torn ACL. He looks fantastic. Like, what a steal in fantasy. If he's on your team, congrats, because since week 4, he ranks 4th in separation, 15th in route win rate, along with 6.33 yards per route run, 44% first read share, while averaging 10.4 air yards per target. Those are all very impressive numbers considering Diggs is 31 years old, coming off a major knee injury. This is another player where the arrow is pointing straight up to the moon for the veteran receiver the rest of the season. It does help that Drake May is his quarterback, who's like a mini Josh Allen. Like, May is an ascending superstar in this league, and good for Diggs because he has another good quarterback to throw him the football. And this Patriots offense has no one really in the passing game, no real competition for targets, which means the volume, the upside for Diggs is going to be there all year long. And I think he goes off again in week 6 against the Saints, who are allowing 29 PPR fantasy points per game to receivers. So yeah, if you stole Diggs in fantasy drafts, he is going to be phenomenal for the rest of the year. Congrats if he's on your team. And last guy on this list is Mr. George Pickens, who looks like he's having the time of his life now that he's out of Pittsburgh. He's a Dallas Cowboy. He's already tied his career high in touchdowns with 5, which is 2nd in the NFL among all receivers. He's already done that in 5 games into the season. That's pretty wild. Good for him. And he's really benefited from being on the #1 ranked offense in football with a quarterback in Dak Prescott who's playing out of his mind right now. He's also 2nd in the NFL in passing yards on a pass-heavy offense. Like, what more could you ask for? Obviously, with CeeDee Lamb being out, it's helped elevate Pickens even more. He's been the guy for the Cowboys through the air as he ranks 2nd in red zone target share, 2nd in receiving touchdowns, which we already mentioned, 9th in fantasy points per target, wide receiver 4 in fantasy since week 2, averaging 20.7 fantasy points per game. Like, I think even once Lamb comes back, I think this will continue. Maybe it'll be better because Lamb will be taking a lot of the defensive attention. He'll be taking the #1 corner. Like, Pickens could still eat in this offense because of the volume, because of the way Dak Prescott is playing. Like, this passing attack, this offense is humming right now. You're obviously starting Pickens this week. He's on this list because I think he goes absolutely crazy in week 6. Even in a tougher matchup against the Carolina Panthers, I don't think it matters. If Pickens is on your roster, you're really happy. Keep him on your roster, start him, feel really good about it, and hopefully he leads you to a victory in week 6. That's all I have for you guys today. Really appreciate all the support, all the love. If you enjoy what we're doing here, please consider subscribing, like this video, comment down below, share the video with your friends and family. You guys are seriously the best, and I'll see you in the next one.